why haven't we really changed the SIM technology for so long? For us, entrepreneurship was something that was kind of like a dream for crazy people. And the only thing we knew is that we were not crazy enough to actually go into that. And when COVID came, we had a lot of time. During COVID, we actually built up the first MVP. We got a lot of doors closed into our nose all the time. Then when we entered actually InnovX, we had revenue, we had clients, we just needed to focus. It was an amazing experience. At InnovX, you could see the businesses, you could see them flourish, you could see the products. It was absolutely amazing to meet every single person that was part of the program. We want to be viewed as the tool for connecting every single person in the world.
Hello and welcome to the InnovX Innovators podcast. I'm Adrian Seceleanu, a business journalist covering the tech industry since the late 90s. In this series, we examine the work of European innovators who are reshaping industries and driving change. Our podcast is produced by InnovX, a startup hub founded in Romania in 2019. Recently, InnovX was recognized by Financial Times, Sifted and Statista as one of the leading startup accelerators in Europe and the top accelerator in Eastern Europe. Today's episode features ZIM Connections, an eSIM marketplace created to help travelers worldwide. Joining us today is Irina Gheorghiu, co-founder and CEO of ZIM Connections. Hello, Irina. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start by hearing a more extended version about what is ZIM Connections doing. What's the target of your startup?
So when we started ZIM 3.5 years ago with my co-founder Julia, we had one goal in mind. We wanted to be our own customers. We traveled quite a lot, which means that we needed that connectivity. We couldn't be paying roaming fees because we couldn't afford it. Buying physical SIM cards it felt outdated. It didn't feel like we were living in 2019. It felt like we were living like 20 years ago. Because nowadays you can just order an Uber in just 5 seconds with one click. Why haven't we really changed the SIM technology for so long? So in one of our trips to the Philippines, that's when we decided to create ZIM. We had the pain to wait in queue for a couple of hours, buying a SIM card. That SIM card didn't end up working, so we had to pay roaming fees. At that time, we were students, so paying roaming fees was just too expensive. And we realized there was a really, really big market to cover. And we came up with a marketplace for travelers. So the first product that we created, the first MVP that we released to the market was purely for people like us. We were our own customers. And then we realized that the potential of this technology is so big and it's so broad that we needed to just expand. Nowadays, we do have the B2C app because it stays in our hearts, and we do want people like travelers like you and I to get connectivity everywhere they go. We actually cover 200 destinations worldwide, so we're kind of everywhere you can imagine. But our biggest focus now is the business to business. So we realized that telecommunication companies signed really, really big deals with really big companies. But what happens with SMBs? What happens when a company doesn't have as many employees that need that connectivity? These telcos do not cover it. So the market gap is so big that we decided to create solutions for SMBs as well as for large enterprises. And those solutions are a bit more tailored to the large enterprise. But our solution for SMBs is really clear. Like, you can get your employees connected wherever you are without actually spending on roaming or expensing, or your employees expensing it to the company.
Thank you for sharing this short version of what did you do in all those years. But let's go back a little bit at the start of your journey. How old were you, and what kind of professional experience did you have when you started to knock on the door of this big industry, the telco industry?
So when we started with Zim, both my co-founder and I were 21 years old. So we were just finishing up our university and we were just starting off our postgraduate education. We both did master's degrees. My co-founder at that time, she was in Hong Kong. I was in London, half in Paris. So as you can see, we were very, very international. We both liked to move a lot around the world. We were used to it because our parents were expats. So it was kind of part of our lives, this traveling. So actually, entrepreneurship one was not something that we were looking for. We didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur. I didn't even knew that this option existed. When I was at school, for us, the normal path was university and then like a career, like being a lawyer, being a journalist, etc. So for us, entrepreneurship was something that was kind of like a dream for crazy people. And the only thing we knew is that we were not crazy enough to actually go into that. And we had no experience, we had no network, we had no people to look up to within our very close environment on that topic, on entrepreneurship. So we just traveled. That was the beginning of all of it. We just traveled, and I remember we were just grabbing a coffee in the Philippines, and we were discussing this issue needs to be addressed. So the idea stayed in our minds, right? We went back to our normal lives. We kept going, we kept studying, and the idea just kept in our heads. And when COVID came, we had a lot of time. We had a lot of spare time to do whatever we wanted.
Everybody
Exactly.
started to have a lot of time. Okay.
Exactly. So during COVID, we actually built up the first MVP. And I remember some of my friends were testing it. And one of my friends sat down with me and he was like, this is actually so cool. Like nobody knew about this technology back then. We were talking about 2019, where eSIM was definitely not a thing. iRalo wasn't existing. eSIM was already into customers' devices. Just nobody knew about it. So when we opened up about eSIM to our friends, to our networks, and everybody said, "This is really, really cool. Why don't you go ahead and actually build a business out of it?" So we went to an acceleration program. I think that was really, really how everything, this huge bubble that is now started. We went to an accelerator, which is called Demium, in Spain, because they just thought the idea was awesome. And they incubated us for 6 months. And at the time, actually, the story is really interesting because we, in part of the incubation, they were making up the teams, but we already came with an idea and with a team. So it was a very weird path for us. We were the only ones who kind of like had it figured out, but at the same time, we were the youngest, so we had nothing figured out. And the accelerator usually invests 6 months after the incubation program. But with us, they put us in front of the investment committee a couple of months in. And we thought, okay, this is the end. It means that if they're going to get us in front of the investment committee so early, it means that they are not sure about the idea and they want to get us out. But that's not what happened. So usually the
It was the
investment
other
committee
way.
takes... Exactly. So the investment committee usually takes 1.5 months to decide. We presented. I went to a restaurant to grab lunch with my parents to kind of celebrate the fact that we made the presentation and all of it. And Julia and I sat down just before that saying, okay, if we do not get this investment, it has been so hard to actually shape our way around this world that if by January we don't get investment, we are closing down. Because we just couldn't figure it out. So we were like, okay, we have 1.5 months to wait for the decision. Literally, while I was doing my lunch, the same day of the presentation, they called me and they confirmed the investment. As you can imagine, we were like 22 at that time, I think. We were super overwhelmed. Like, we just got 100K into the bank. What do we do with that? Like, we didn't actually had a plan in our minds. I think we made up a lot of things while we went. And also, we did have really great advisors, and the accelerator helped us a lot with that financial planning and setting up what are going to be our next goals and what we want to do. And after that, we're like, okay, 100K is not going to be enough. We need to raise more money. So we then raised 300K in total, and that was kind of like the beginning of saying, okay, this thing is real. We need to go forward. We need to see what happens.
And if you look back at those months, which were the most important things? I don't know, were the discussions with mentors, I don't know, looking at other people which were maybe or more well prepared or less prepared, or I don't know, what did matter most in order to go on and keep working on it?
I think the people around us, the fact of being, because when you're an entrepreneur, everything feels lonely. Like when you have a conversation with another entrepreneur, that's when you realize, okay, maybe my world is not that small. Maybe my world is bigger, and I can actually get support from other people that are doing the same things and they actually understand the pain. So being part of that accelerator, I think that changed the whole journey for us. We were seeing other people with amazing potential ideas, really, really great entrepreneurs that were building like stuff that will blow your mind. And that's kind of how we realized, okay, this is actually a community. Like you cannot do this by yourself. We cannot do this by ourselves. We need a team. We need mentors. So that's when we actually dig into the market to look for mentors. And the ex-director of Vodafone for the UK joint ventures joined our cap table, and that we actually still talk to him 3 years in every single week, and we call him if something goes wrong. And I don't think at this stage, at the beginning was very strategic, everything was about the business. Now it also becomes about us. How do we feel as entrepreneurs? How do we feel as leaders? And he also helps us a lot with that. We also have the founder, the ex-founder of DG Mobile in the cap table. So he also calls us and helps us with the strategy of the business, how the future, how are we going to do things, and honestly, just being surrounded by really amazing people, even though they cannot give you advice, and just seeing how powerful their motivation is, I think it's just helped us to push forward and seeing like, okay, it might get hard, but we can do it.
I want to spend a little bit more time talking to you about this journey of very young entrepreneurs, around 20 years, trying to break in a very siloed, I would say, industry, the telco industry, with very big players who tend not, or at least years ago, they tended not to look below at smaller players, or tend to work only with established businesses, with seasoned entrepreneurs that offer stability and so on. So, what was the play that succeeded? I don't know. You were stubborn in knocking on doors, or how did you do it? Because I think it's a common struggle for entrepreneurs, especially youngers, who are trying to strike deals with big companies. So, what was your journey?
So the journey was actually a really, really interesting one. From the first telco that we signed to the first large enterprise that we signed, which is it's in the top 5 biggest companies in the world in terms of revenue. And that was our first B2B client. I mean, we were definitely not ready for that. And we actually shaped the product around their wanting. So the journey started when we realized that we could work with any telco in the world. But the problem with that is the fact that every telco has different technology. So what we needed to do was put ourselves out there and talk about tech. What telcos, even though they say they're super innovative and they love technology, they don't. We have seen telcos that have been using the same system for the past 50 years. So when you go to them and you talk to them about a topic that they're interested in, that they should be part of, but they are not yet, and you tell them how to implement it very easily, that's when our doors started opening up. Just us looking that we knew a bit more than they did, and they just couldn't afford that. They needed to be on the top of innovation. So that helped a lot. So since we were so small, the possibility of innovation was constant. We were always innovating. So if this telco has X type of system, we would make it agnostic. So I think that was very, very important for us. That's why it took us 2 years to develop our tech. And that's what makes us different in the market, is the fact that we know our things on the tech side. That opened a lot of doors. Also having the people in the network, like the director of Vodafone, the founder of Digi, that opened also a lot of doors into this world. We got a lot of doors closed into our nose all the time, all the time. At the beginning, it was not even a conversation. It was just we were just ghosted, or it was a complete deep no. So that was
And
really, really hard to get in.
how did you manage that no or ghosting or everything? How was it?
I think that's one of the benefits of starting off, because for us, when we started, it was just like jumping into an empty pool, like
Okay.
literally like somebody pushing you, and you were just jumping into a pool that was might have been empty, might have not, so you just didn't know what was going to happen. So having also that knowledge, that actually not having that knowledge made us more bold and more persistent. I think when we got a no, it was every time was like, okay, we're going to reach out in 2 months, okay, we're going to reach out in 6. And now we have deals with telcos, with companies that we talked to like 3 years ago, because we were so persistent. And the no didn't mean no, it meant maybe. It always means maybe. So you never know what can happen. Just, I think we were very, very, very bold in our approach. We were like, we didn't talk about anything else than the business. We're like, okay, it was not like, because I know sales techniques now, they tells you to build a relationship. We did build a relationship, but we were very bold. We're like, we want to do this. Are you going to be part of it or not? And that helped a lot. It might not help all the businesses, but for us, since eSIM was very, very new, most of our big deals at the beginning were very scared to start off with a technology that nobody knew.
Can you learn to be bold, or you are just naturals?
I think it depends. I think both Julia and I come from backgrounds that are very, very different. Julia comes from a background of economics. She already did a startup in the past. I come from a background of finance. So my whole past was about talking, about building relationships, about being bold, going after people. So I think it can be built. It definitely can. If you're an entrepreneur, and I think it's very important if you're a CEO to be very bold. And I know that that's not super easy to do, but just going into that mindset that, hey, it might be a no now, but it might be a yes in 2 weeks. You just never know.
And I don't know, do you need to read a certain book, listen to a specific podcast, or listen to, I don't know, some piece of music, or what works in building
What
that state
works?
of boldness?
I think what works is you putting in the mindset that you will be the one that knows what's best for your business. And what is best for your business at this stage for us is just making money, growing the revenues, signing off really large enterprises. So setting up that goal into your mind, because maybe 1 year ago was not that. 1 year ago was setting up the team. So I was very bold. I was going after a lot of people on LinkedIn. Hey, join us, join us, join us. ZIM is the next best thing. Just come join the team. Now for us, it's like going for these really large enterprises and signing those deals. So when you set that goal, it just don't get out of it, because there's so many things that can make you get out of your zone. Like, so many issues happen on a day-to-day basis, honestly. Like, every single day there's a fire to set off. But if you put yourself like kind of that goal of saying, okay, this is the target, I need to reach that. In terms of, I do read a lot of books on entrepreneurship. I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I like the Diary of a CEO, but I like the first episodes, not the latest ones. I think the latest ones are too cliche. I like the bold ones, the real ones, the ones they talk about the hard things. And I think we do not talk enough about these hard things. I think we talk too much about success.
Okay. Now, continuing to discuss about your journey, why did you apply to the InnovX accelerator? Because you went to accelerator in Spain, so one could wonder, okay, but why in Romania? Why InnovX? And why did you decide to apply, and how was your journey?
So when we started with Zim, I was in London, my co-founder was in Hong Kong, but then we had a really deep connection with Spain just because I went to school in Spanish. My co-founder is half Spanish, half Italian. I'm half Spanish, half Romanian. So definitely it was the Spanish side that kind of got us together. So it was a first good step. Then when we entered actually InnovX, we had revenue, we had clients. We just needed to focus. We needed to have like a basis of, okay, what's the next big things what we're going to focus on and how we're going to strategize on that. So I think that's the fact of scaling up. That was a bit more challenging for us. And at that stage, when I got contacted by InnovX, I was like, we didn't really do anything in Eastern Europe. And I'm actually really proud of my Romanian roots. I went to Romania every single summer, even though I was living abroad. I love my Romanian side. I love Romanian food. I love Romanian culture. I needed to feel part because as an expat, I lived in so many places that I don't really feel at home anywhere. So going back to the roots was for me really important. And at the same time, the Eastern market was getting really developed in Eastern Europe. So for us, it was just perfect timing. It was like we can go into a market that's really interesting for us, whilst I can still develop my business in a country that I absolutely love.
Okay, now that explains. And how was your journey? Was it a useful one? Did you make any, I don't know, connections that helped the business during
Yes.
InnovX program?
Yes, it was an amazing experience. The entrepreneurs that were part of the program, amazing entrepreneurs, and it was the first program we were doing on scaling up mode, because the first incubation everybody was on ideation stage and there was no business yet. At Innovix, you could see the businesses, you could see them flourish, you could see the products. It was absolutely amazing to meet every single person that was part of the program. And we kept in touch and we actually exchanged a lot of contacts because I know some of those companies wanted to come into the UK, and hopefully we could help with that. And we also took contacts from, we actually talked to booking.com from Eastern Europe and all of that. So we did have a lot of contacts from the program. And I think that was our goal: meet amazing people and also set up some business practices within Eastern Europe.
I guess you shared during the discussion a lot of advices, but if you would put them in a structured form, let's say, what kind of advice would you have for younger entrepreneurs who are maybe in a stage like you were some years ago? What should they do, and what should they not do? Maybe.
Um, I would say honestly, like if you have a great idea and just jump into the pool, like don't look. It's just jump in. And also for me, the most important thing that I have it happened when we started with Zim was the team. Surround yourself with people that are going to support you. Have an amazing co-founder. That's for me. But I could never be a solo founder. Well, never say never, but for me the solo founder concept is really hard because being an entrepreneur is as hard as it can get, but being alone it's even harder. So having a co-founder that you can actually be vulnerable with, talk about real things, I think that's really really key to the success of the business and also the success of you as a leader.
Okay. Coming back to these days, how was the year so far for ZIM Connections?
So for us, it has been one of the best years, actually the best year in terms of revenue and growth. We have opened up the B2B side of the business. We did a lot. It was a very chaotic year, I would say, because the B2C channels started generating a lot of revenue, which is kind of passive because the app is built and we're always making new improvements. But our tech has been focusing on the B2B. And we opened up this B2B channel, which was a chaos. We didn't know who to serve, what product to make. Now we ended up with like 4 different products. And it was a market that was really hard to actually understand how to operate within it, because we're not actually replacing anything. We're just adding a new product to an enterprise. So it was a hard journey to understand where we're going to sell and who we're going to sell it to. But now we did. So 2024 was kind of the year of chaos and kind of understanding and putting everything together into a strategy. And now we're just ready to scale up that side of the business, and just taking over the world one eSIM at a time.
Okay. And one question, how do you see the European ecosystem for, I mean, startups, investors, mentors, everything? Because one common path that we see sometimes is European entrepreneurs moving to the States and setting up their company and moving the headquarters and so on. So I'm curious about your perspective, also because you have an international experience moving around the world. So how do you see this?
So I think I have a very different opinion from people around me. So this is purely my opinion. I want to stay in Europe. I'm going to stay in Europe. So that was actually one of the first things we decided with my co-founder. We need to stay in Europe. Like, the company is growing massively, and at some point we might create like maybe a subsidiary somewhere else, but our head is going to stay in Europe. We want that to happen just because we are literally the European product as a person. We moved so much around Europe. We lived in Brussels, which is the capital of Europe. And I think we're really proud of that. So we want to keep the company in Europe because we want to see this market growing. I mean, everybody's going to the US. Yes, there's a lot more investment opportunities. Um, there's there's more of everything. But if you at the end of not if you end up not staying, you're basically taking away those opportunities also from Europe and moving them to the US. So what we want is, when we started with our investment rounds, we always started by Europe. We do have US investors as well, but just everybody told me at the beginning, you cannot raise in the US if you're not in the US. And here's the proof: we did raise in the US and we're not in the US. So you can do it. And I think for us, this has been really, really important. We plan to stay in Europe. And I think the ecosystem is getting bigger, it's getting more powerful, it's getting more important as time goes by. I think it will be hard to reach the US status, but if people end up always going there, there's not going to be any opportunities in Europe anyway. So I think more of us should stay.
That's a valid point. And speaking of financing and investors, are you planning any new financing rounds? Do you need new funds for developing? And what are your thoughts around this?
So at this stage, we are mostly looking for profitability. We're quite close there. So we're hoping to achieve profitability by 2025. So that's kind of the goal for now. We are raising some money from current investors that are already in the cap table. And if we have opportunity to raise from new investors that are 100% strategic to our business, we are not going to say no. We're just going to review the opportunity. But we already did 2 rounds with really, really amazing investors.
Okay, and how much did you raise until now, if you can disclose the figure?
We raised $1 million between pre-seed and seed. So we raised 300 in pre-seed, 700 in seed.
Okay, and as we approach the end of our discussion, I'd like to hear you talk a little bit about your dream. At this point, what's your dream? Where do you and your co-founder want to develop ZIM Connections? Where do you sit? I don't know. The standard question is around the next 5 years, but I don't know, 5, 10 years. Where do you want to be?
We want to be viewed as the tool for connecting every single person in the world. So we want, when actually what we're trying for our customers is when they tell us something is wrong or something is really good with an eSIM, instead of calling it an eSIM, to call it a ZIM. And it's working for some of them, not for all. So it's a process that takes time. But ideally, we want to be the number one related to eSIM, not only for B2C, but mostly for B2B. Like, we want to make everything automatic. You're a small business, you don't need to sign a telco agreement. You can just go to our platform, log in, and just start assigning and using eSIMs for your employees, your customers and whoever you want. So for us, ideally, you would be to have at least 1 billion connections in the next 5 years, which is a very bold dream, but we want to be part of this international movement that we are seeing of digital nomads, businesses providing for their employees connectivity wherever they are. If you're going to X destination, we don't care. You're just going to stay connected. COVID changed everything, and we definitely want to be part of that futuristic movement that's going to happen.
And what is the main challenge for you? Getting people to know about eSIMs or ZIMs, as you call them, because I'm curious. Probably you research this. Does every business know about eSIMs, or maybe some customers are still stuck with the old ways of going to operator and looking at the roaming fees and so on? So
Yeah.
how are things there?
That's the biggest problem, and that's the biggest challenge for us, educating the customer, but not only the B2C customer, because the B2C customer, that requires a lot of marketing, which we do not have the capital for right now. So that's why we're working a lot with word of mouth, referrals, affiliates, to actually make these people learn that they do have a technology they can use. But for businesses, it's a different story, because you're going to them and telling them, hey, you can use this technology. It's very, very easy. And sometimes they think it's magic. This is not real. This is not happening. I don't know why I would use this. So convincing them that's actually, hey, you're going to actually decrease your cost by 70% on roaming, and it's going to be even easier to manage, and we can actually make everything you want. We can make it, like if you want your eSIMs to block Netflix, block video calls, etc. when you're abroad, we can do that. So having that new product coming into the business, I think that's really hard. It has been a blue ocean so far in the B2B space, and I think that's the biggest challenge, to get into that blue ocean and actually convincing that this technology is here to stay.
Thank you for sharing that, and I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully we can discuss again when you are going to reach that 1 billion Zimmers, let's say.
100%. I would love that.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again for sharing your journey and teaching us and those who are watching some, I think, valuable lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. It was great to be here.
Also, we thank you for joining us today for this new episode of InnovX podcast, and stay put, because we are coming back soon with another episode. Goodbye.